there's a lot to be not only concerned with, but horrifying.
Possessed a circular saw that was running and tried to cut him.
This is the kind of event that I would send somebody to prison for. You need to know that.
What you just witnessed were the terrifying peak of a holiday nightmare. But what could possibly drive a man to pull a running circular saw on a complete stranger? This is the People versus Russell James Kraft. On Christmas Day, an innocent bystander offered a simple Merry Christmas. It should have been a moment of kindness, but for Russell, it triggered a horrifying assault involving a running power saw and an attempted vehicular strike. Attorney William Keogh claims this was a total mental breakdown, while prosecutor Goodrich points to a dark history of stalking. How does a polite greeting turn lethal? At stake is a 4-year felony and the safety of a community left in shock. To understand the fine line between a mental health crisis and criminal intent in the courtroom, hit subscribe and join our analysis of these complex cases. Let's head into the courtroom and see how this unfolded.
All right, this is People of the State of Michigan versus Russell Kraft, file 25-6988 FH. Counsel, you want to state your appearances, please, beginning with the people?
Melissa Goodrich, Franklin County Prosecutor.
William Key on behalf of Russell James Kraft.
All right, and we're here for sentencing on a charge of felonious assault, a 4-year felony. The guideline range was initially scored at 0 to 9 months. Mr. Keogh, have you had a chance to review the report and recommendations with you?
I have, Your Honor. We reviewed it. No objection to the narrative portion or the scoring of this one.
Ms. Goodrich, any from the people?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Keogh, I would indicate I had an opportunity to review a letter submitted from Ronan Psychological Associates regarding Mr. Kraft's progress. So go ahead with anything you'd like to say. On your
thank you, Your Honor. I think when you take a look at this case, what we really have is a mental health crisis. The court is obviously aware of some of the factual basis of this case. Happened on Christmas Day quite some time ago, and I think there was a situation where my client had ideation, and there were thoughts of ending his own life that day. And I think when the victim confronted my client that day, say confront when he had contact with my client that day, it set off a chain reaction based on where my client was mentally that day. I'm glad the court has had an opportunity to review the mental health records from Mr. Kraft and some of the medicine that he's currently taking to address those problems. He's been on bond for quite some time in this case, and he's done very, very well. I'd like to thank the prosecutor for making the offer in this case, and I do think that there is a path forward with the recommendations outlined in the PSI. I think that period of probation, along with mandated and reported counseling, will get him to where he needs to be mental health wise, and he can get back to living the kind of life that he's capable of living. He's a pretty accomplished person. If you take a look at some of the actual jobs that he had a family, and now all of a sudden he's trying to put the pieces back together. So we're asking for an opportunity to allow him to do that. And I think
okay, I don't want to, given the range and the recommendations, I don't want to kind of sandbag you. I mean, I'm giving a lot of thought to whether this is a case that, despite the scoring, calls for reasonable grounds for incarceration. So I'd like to hear your input as to that.
Well, Your Honor, I think that I could probably concede that there are some things that are not taken into account in the guidelines based on some of the specifics. What I want the court to consider is rather the way the act was committed versus what was going on in the mind of my client at that time. I think when I look at a case like this and I look at the act itself, there's a lot to be not only concerned with, but horrifying. I totally understand the court's concern and what the victim had to deal with at that particular time. But I remember one of the first lessons I learned in law school was mens rea. And what's going on in somebody's mind at the time they commit an act. What is actually their motive? What exactly is going on in their mind? And I think what was going on in my client's mind was that he was not of sound, that this was somebody who was having a mental breakdown, who moments before was thinking about taking his own life. This was somebody who was on Christmas Day looking at the shattering of his entire world, was thinking about ending everything. Obviously, we don't defend any of what he did that day. That was I think what happened that day was just a complete and utter mental breakdown. And if you take a look at his history, he's not a violent person. I think what he did that day was violent, but I think it was also mental health, complete deterioration versus any kind of intent to be violent per se.
Great, thank you, Mr. Keel. Thank you. Mr. Kraft, you don't have to make a statement today. If you choose not to, I don't hold that against you at all, but you're also welcome to come anything you wish. Is there anything you want to say, sir?
Your Honor, I regret my actions that day. I do wish to apologize to you for the mistakes. I was going through a tremendous amount of life changes and affected me very negatively. So I just appreciate the court's time.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Goodrich, any recommendations from the people?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. We're here because on Christmas Day in 2024, the victim was exiting a gas station and wished defendant a Merry Christmas while holding the door for him. The defendant nearly hit him in the face while he flipped him off and yelled at him. The defendant then pursued him out to his vehicle and possessed a circular saw that was running and tried to cut him, or pretend he was going to. And then the defendant tried to hit the victim with his vehicle, which was caught on video. The defendant is 46 years old. His first arrest was at 43 years old. That was for stalking. He served 10 days in jail on that case and was discharged unsuccessful because he incurred this offense. He has 0 prior felonies and that 1 prior misdemeanor. He's unemployed with a bachelor's degree. He has served 31 days. Due to the severity of the offense, the level of threat of physical harm and public safety concerning acting in a dangerous manner, that like he did that night towards an innocent member of the community who was just trying to be polite. I think that mid guideline range is appropriate here. Defendant could continue his mental health medication regime while incarcerated. I do commend him for addressing his mental health issues. But he did have the same resources back then. He was already under court jurisdiction and encountered the law prior to this incident happening. And he did cause trauma to an innocent person who now has to live with what happened for the rest of his life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraft, if you please stand for the court sentence. You know, this is a troubling incident, and I know that mental health did play a role in what happened that day, as your attorney has well articulated and is documented in the PSI and the previous evaluations that I've considered in this case. You know, but even when you're going through some depression crisis, you know, random people on the street are entitled to go about their day without fear that somebody's going to push them in front of a subway like we see on the news different places, or, you know, assault them with a saw like you did that day just for wishing you Merry Christmas. I mean, on Christmas Day, I mean, I know you take that the very wrong way, but that's a normal thing. It could have been anybody in the world doing that day, trying to just be courteous to you, and you reciprocate by a very frightening incident for that person. I mean, so I know that you were going through a depressive incident and we're in a suicidal state, but I think that's the public still demands that they be able to go to the gas station on Christmas Day and wish someone Merry Christmas without being assaulted. And I think that justice does require some punishment for that, not just the rehabilitation efforts on probation. I think we have to balance all those things. If I was just looking at pure punishment, this is the kind of event that I would send somebody to prison for. You need to know that. And the charges that you were facing could have definitely ended up there. So your attorney's done a great job with presenting, you know, what's been going on with you so that the prosecutor could take that into account. And for that reason, you're not going to prison today. And I don't think that we need to overdo a jail sanction. But I do think that there is some reasonable grounds for incarceration given the seriousness of the incident and the demands of public safety. Taking all those things into account, I am going to place you on probation as recommended. It'll be for a 2-year initial term, not 18 months. I think I want it to be a 2-year initial term just so we can make sure we follow up that you're staying in a better spot with your mental health. Okay. Some of the terms that you're subject to, all the terms listed on page 2 in the pre-sentence report. I want to highlight some of those. You know, you have to take medication as prescribed and complete treatment as recommended. There is a curfew. You have to maintain employment. There's a crime victims assessment of $130, $350 in court costs, which is well below the average per case cost as calculated by the State Court Administrator's Office. $60 DNA testing fee and comply with testing, $68 state cost, a monthly supervision fee to the Department of Corrections. And I think that I'll also sentence you to serve 4 months in the Sheboygan County Jail with credit for 31 days previously served. That's a bit shy of the midpoint of the guideline range that the prosecutor recommended, which I think is a fair recommendation. I think it's measured and appropriate, and it's nowhere near the top end of that as well. Mr. Kraft, you can petition for early discharge from probation at the halfway point if you've complied. We're going to hand you a piece of paper about that. Also, you can appeal if you wish by filing an application to the Court of Appeals. We're going to hand you a piece of paper about that. If you want a lawyer, you'd have to ask within 6 months. We're going to ask you to initial the appeal paperwork for us. So we have a copy of the record we gave it to you. The other one is for you to fill out if you want to take an appeal. Do you have any questions? Within 24 hours of your release, you have to contact your supervising agent, and I imagine supervision will be transferred down to Isabella County where you live. But you will have to serve that sentence forthwith. Okay. Well, good luck to you, Mr. Pat. Let's see Mr. Gurmurthy on Zoom. We'll do that real quick here.
The judge made the final call. Russell Kraft walked away with 4 months in jail and 2 years of probation. But here's the question. Was justice served? The law considers his mental health, but the victim's trauma is forever. Comment below, team defense or team prosecution? Was this sentence too lenient? If this case got you thinking, hit like. Share this with anyone who loves a good courtroom debate.